Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to a solo edition of the AZ Wildcats Podcast. I kind of feel on the night after the Raw after Mania, a little bit like John Cena, dutifully doing my job to carry out the storyline that is the Arizona Athletics offseason. And my teammate, my coworker, Damon Dog, or Dwayne, is on a beach in Hawaii somewhere doing Lord knows what in celebration of his friend's wedding. Maybe his wedding? Who knows? We're going to talk a little bit about that on the AZ Wildcats podcast. Today, we have a great show. T-Mac being disrespected by analysts. Arizona softball has a doubleheader. Arizona's football schedule has been released. And Carter Bryant, if he does not return to Arizona, how can Tommy Lloyd replace him? All that and more in just 30 seconds. Don't you go anywhere. What is going on? What is good, everybody in Wildcat Land? My name is Kevin Thomas. I will be your host for today. You might know me as Kevo Post online, but my guy, like I said, Damon Dog, is somewhere in Hawaii. He is celebrating a little bit of a wedding celebration. Maybe his wedding? Is he a shotgun wedding kind of guy? I don't know. Rumor has it it's his friend's wedding, and I don't know if I believe our guy Damon Dog. We're gonna have to find out when he gets back from Hawaii. I did tell him though that if he stops by one of our wonderful partners at Circle K in Hawaii, he must text me and let me know if they have Spam Musubi at the Circle K's in Hawaii, because that would be life-changing. I'm a huge Musubi guy. I think Musubis are a delicious snack, and they do carry those in some gas stations in that part of America. So got to update me on if Circle K has Spam Musubi. Chat, how are we doing this morning on this Tuesday morning here in April? Ready to talk about Arizona Wildcats athletics with all of you guys. Leave a comment in the chat if you think Carter Bryant will come back for next season, because we're going to talk a little bit about that in the second half of the show. But like I said, Damon is in Hawaii, but before he did go to the islands, he got a ton of stuff done for all of you guys here in the chat. He had a great conversation with a bunch of draft experts at the NFL Combine. I'm sure you remember when he abandoned me to go out to Indy. Not exactly as glorious as Hawaii that time, but when he was out in Indy, he did speak with a ton of draft experts about T-Mac, about where they think T-Mac could fall, not only in this year's draft, but in the class of rookies going into next season. And I think draft experts know the kind of talent that Tetairoa McMillan is. I think draft experts understand the kind of person that Tetairoa McMillan is. And that video is to be released the day that Tetairoa McMillan gets drafted. As soon as T-Mac's name is called by Roger Goodell on stage, that video will be released so that you and fans of his new team can get to know T-Mac through the eyes of NFL analysts themselves. Words right from the mouth of the people making these decisions. And that kind of leads me into my first topic of today is why is Tetairoa McMillan being disrespected by these mock drafts? Why is his name falling down the draft order? At one point, he was rumored to go as high as 5 to the Jacksonville Jaguars. That does not seem to be the case any longer, chat. And Michael here says he was listening to ESPN radio this morning, and my lord, they say Tet like it's a known thing, annoying. I was thinking that as well, actually, Michael. I was doing my research for today's stream, and there are multiple articles with Tetairoa McMillan's nickname in the title, but it's not T-Mac, it's Tet. And I thought to myself, like, I'm sure it's happened in the past, but off the top of my head, I couldn't think of another time where there was a player that had a popular nickname that was being used while, promoting that player entering the draft. But I don't know the last time that there was a popular nickname already existing and then people just went rogue and created their own nickname. The player comes out and says, I don't like it. I like my old nickname, and people still use it. I don't know when the last time this happened was. I'm sure it's happened before. Chat, if you can remember one time where a player says, hey, please call me something else, and people refuse to listen to them. That kind of surprises me. No, it is not Tet. It is T-Mac. He has said it at the Combine. He has said it multiple occasions. No, Fafita has brought it up. Yeah, it's kind of lazy to call Tetairoa McMillan Tet. I feel like that is a situation where you're kind of typing out his name and you just don't want to go through the, whole Tetairoa thing. It's really not a hard name to spell. I don't understand the insistence on using Tet. It does not make a whole lot of sense to me. Like, Michael's name is Michael. If he goes by Mike, I wouldn't call him Mikey if he didn't like it. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And Eric Duthie says, bear down. Icy Mike in the chat. Happy Tuesday, Icy Mike. Also, I realized that when, you make fun of me for saying, what's up, cat, you also have a cat in your profile picture. So I think maybe, possibly, you just enjoy the fact that I'm shouting out to cats everywhere across the nation on this show. Haven't the Kelce brother come out and say they don't pronounce their last name wrong? But just go with it now. Is that true? I haven't seen that. How else would you pronounce it? Kelsey? Like, how else would you? But Michael says here, haven't the Kelce brothers come out and said that they pronounced their last name wrong, but just go with it now? And that is a thing. I think people sometimes, like, when they have a name that is commonly mispronounced or everyone already understands it as one thing, I think people do often kind of just go with it. But it's up to the person, right? If they don't want to be called something and they truly do care about it, they can make a hubbub about it. And T-Mac doesn't really seem like the type to do that. That's why it's on us to make sure that people stop calling him Tet, because it is ridiculous, and he does not enjoy it. So I hope the Kelce brothers maybe come out someday and tell us how to really pronounce their name, because I would love to, honestly, pronounce their name correctly. I think names are super important. Like, going through the journalism school, you're often taught that, always ask people how to spell their name, because names are important. Like, even if it's just John, you always want to make sure it's John or Jon. Like, names are important, and it's important to get them right, because it is probably the smallest thing you could do in terms of trying to get something right with an interaction with somebody. Getting their name correct is the smallest thing you could do. And when they tell you that they don't like to be called something, maybe don't call them that. But like I said, that kind of rolls me into, why is T-Mac? Why is Tet, as some analysts, experts call him? And honestly, that kind of goes into my point here of if you are truly an expert, one, you shouldn't be calling him Tet, because, like I said, if you're truly an expert doing your homework, he doesn't like that. And two, how are these experts moving T-Mac so far down their draft boards? I bring that to you because they've seemingly gone stale. I think when the draft process first began, people were excited about the potential of T-Mac as a huge receiver that can catch everything in sight. He's a freak athlete. He might not be the fastest player in the draft, but he's not slow by any means. He has good separation in open field. It just seems like one of those situations where over time there are prospects that make a big splash in the draft process, and the steadier, more known entity guys, I think, sometimes can slip down the draft board just a little bit based on the fact that there's nothing really going on. There's no news. There's no exciting 40 time that just skyrockets a guy like Marcus Golden or just Golden right up the board. And I wonder, like, was it the video? Was it that old leaked video that came out of T-Mac talking about how I don't really like to watch, football outside of practice, or I don't really like to watch film? Is it that? Is it, made up narratives about him being some big, slow oaf who's just like a tall catch ball, a high point guy? Is it, the made up narratives about his work ethic? Is it the made up narratives that he doesn't really love the game of football? Because everyone that you talk to about Tetairoa McMillan tells you he's the hardest worker in the room. He's business first. He's pretty much a professional when it comes to all approaches to the sport of football. And it just doesn't really match up with what you're hearing on the, the boards and the mock drafts and Twitter. It just doesn't match with the narrative that people who were in the room with him sell you on. And I don't know what to make of that, chat. I don't know what you make of that. But to me, it screams that NFL draft analysts kind of have gone stale on the idea of, yeah, we know he's awesome. And then you kind of start poking holes. And then you kind of start saying, yeah, we know he's awesome, but this too. And then you might look at other guys on the draft board and be like, well, yeah, we know he has these deficiencies, but look what he just ran in his 40. That's new information. We didn't know that he was that fast on paper. Or look what he did in his bench press, or look what he did in his high jump. It just, it feels like sometimes being a known entity early on in the draft process can almost hurt you because of all the new shiny toys that get entered from the end of the season until Roger Goodell is on the stage. So I don't know if it's, last season's offense that has people doubting whether or not T-Mac can be a part of some sort of successful system. I think that would be a bit far-fetched. I also wonder if maybe T-Mac just was having a bike ride in Tucson or in Phoenix or in California and just hit a GM's dog and it got all the way back to the NFL circles. Because that's the place I'm at, is what did T-Mac do to these people for them to be underrating him the way that they are? There is no reason that Tetairoa McMillan should be falling as far as he is in this draft for the reasons that people are providing, at least. I would understand if, they were moving him down based off of purely fit for some teams, because, yeah, you're correct. If you're at the top of the draft, you're probably not one of the better teams in the NFL. And it's likely that getting a top end receiver at the top of the draft is not going to boost you from, being in the top 3 of the draft to being in Super Bowl contention. You're likely to go for a higher positional need in that scenario. But I also understand that some teams, are in a position where they can draft most talented available. And some of the teams that are being, picked to draft T-Mac, the teams ahead of them just as easily could pick up Tetairoa McMillan. I think when you look at ESPN's most recent mock draft, Field Yates and Mel Kiper have T-Mac as the third guy off the board. The third receiver off the board in the NFL draft. Do you guys at home think that Tetairoa McMillan is the third best receiver coming out of college this season? I don't think he's the third best. I think he is the number 1 best. I think he's the number 1 best by so much that having him at the third receiver off the board, it feels like a mistake. I think it's almost, I don't want to be hyperbolic, but I feel like it's almost laughable based off of what T-Mac produced in college, the skill set that he showcased with his frame that he has, compared to the people that they're putting ahead of him, such as Golden of Texas and Egbuka of Ohio State. While those are 2 incredibly talented players, Golden's incredibly fast on top of all of that. It is tough to, in my mind, say that they are better draft prospects than Tetairoa McMillan, who can do everything they can do in a bigger frame as a better athlete. He might not be as fast as Golden. He might not have the I'll call it pedigree of a guy that went to Ohio State or a guy that went to Texas. But it just seems like Tetairoa McMillan isn't the shiny toy that these draft analysts really want to play with. It feels like that's Golden, that's Egbuka. But I think to have Tetairoa McMillan as the third guy off the board from the receiver class this year is insane to me. I don't understand the scouts that are saying that Egbuka is a better player than T-Mac. It just doesn't correlate with what I was watching all this past season for Ohio State and for Texas. Like I said, Egbuka is an incredible player. 81 receptions, 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns this past season for Ohio State. And that is an Ohio State team that has produced, incredible receiving talent in recent years. Marvin Harrison last season, he's ended up in the NFL with the Cardinals, and people still, I know last year was underwhelming, people still talk about his top end potential as a number 1 guy in the NFL. T-Mac, when you look at what he was able to do in a horrific Arizona offense last season that was nowhere near as talented as Ohio State. He put up 84 receptions, 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns with an average yards per catch of 15.7. I don't, because if you put T-Mac in Ohio State level offense, the man's going for 1,500 plus easily. I feel like, with the talent that he has at 6'5", over 210 pounds. It doesn't make sense. But where could T-Mac go in the NFL draft upcoming here? We are going to look at all of that and a lot more on the rest of the AZ Wildcats podcast after this quick break. Well, one thing that I have learned in the past couple months is that I'm getting old, folks. I had a birthday in March, and after that, I have started to feel the effects of aging, and that is why I use our friends over at Timeline. Timeline sells health and longevity supplements featuring the proprietary, that's a tough SAT word, MitoPure. MitoPure works with the cells in your body to help reverse age-related decline. Benefits include increased strength, energy, and endurance. They have done 15 plus years of research and secured 30 plus US patents for their products. It is incredibly important to take care of your body as you age, because you only get one body and you only get one chance. Age is not something you can undo. It is only something you can prevent. The cells in our bodies are like the building block of life, and that is why MitoPure is so important. Timeline is a supplement that works with those cells to help give you more energy, feel stronger during your athletic performances, and preserve health and mobility as you start to age. This is a lot of science. I'm breaking down a lot of science to you, and all you need to know is that with regular use, you'll see and feel the difference in your energy levels, in your workouts, and in your everyday life. MitoPure recharges your cells and helps your body's systems work more efficiently. It is the only supplement clinically proven to rejuvenate health at a cellular level. Get ready to be at your best with our friends over at Timeline. Right now, Timeline is giving you 10% off of your first order of MitoPure. Go to timeline.com/PHNX to get started. That's timeline.com/PHNX, code PHNX. Now, our great friends over at Sanderson Ford are hooking you up with employee pricing. It is unbelievable. It's huge news from David Camerl, president of America's most awarded Ford dealership, Sanderson Ford. Employee pricing levels the playing field for all Ford dealers as everyone gets the same set price. However, other dealers will still add addendums and add-ons. Sanderson Ford ain't doing none of that. They care about you. They're not trying to fool you over at Sanderson Ford. Choose Sanderson because they have the inventory and a 70-year reputation of treating you right. Ford is undeniably the most America-first automaker in the world. 80% of Ford vehicles sold are assembled in factories located in America. They will be less affected by these crazy tariffs. So, quick disclaimer, this promotion excludes 2025 Expedition, 2025 Super Duty, Raptors, Mustangs, and Bronco specialty vehicles, but it's still an incredible offer. Make sure to head over to our friends over at Sanderson Ford to take advantage of this right now. All right, Wildcat fans, we are back for segment 2, and I wanted to continue this T-Mac conversation by quickly breaking down some of the places that he could end up in this year's NFL draft. And if you are in this chat, real quick, leave a like for me on this video. I'm running solo today, folks. I could use the extra support and energy here in the chat. It would mean the world. And as I'm talking about this, please leave a comment and say where you think or you would like T-Mac to end up in this year's NFL draft as we run through these options real quick right here. The Green Bay Packers at number 23 have been picking up a lot of steam to select Tetairoa McMillan, which was not the case, I feel like, in the beginning of this process. This was a process that began with T-Mac, honestly, at the top end of this first round in that 5 through 10 range. There was not a lot of rumors of T-Mac falling all the way to either Justin Spears' Chargers or my buddy Grayson's Packers, for example. And then all of a sudden, it starts to shift towards, could he go to the Cowboys? And we're going to get into all that later. But the latest shift, it seems, towards Green Bay. And the rumors swirling are that Green Bay has held a ton of their, pre-draft meetings already with prospects, and that they have spent quite a lot of time talking to, thinking about, and potentially planning to select Tetairoa McMillan in the first round at pick number 23. They would either have to trade up from 23 or get lucky and have T-Mac fall all the way down to them at 23. I'd be surprised if T-Mac is still there on the board for the Packers to select. And Michael here says it in the chat. He would ball out as a Packer, could be the number 1 option with Jay Love, and be on a playoff team. All 1,000% true. I also think when you look at the Packer receiver room, what the game looks like in the Packer receiver room, I feel like, Christian Watson is often injured, and if you look at the players in there, they don't really have that number 1 guy, or the guy that really could be the number 1 guy on an NFL team and stay healthy doing it. If you do take T-Mac, he could end up being that guy for you in Green Bay. And we know the way Green Bay Packers fans and front office like their franchise. It is business first. It is football first. And that's the kind of guy that Tetairoa McMillan is, right? He is a football-first guy. He is a businessman when it comes to this. And I don't mean that he's looking for money. I mean, he shows up with his briefcase and he goes to work as soon as he enters that facility, and he's not leaving until he's done with his job. And I think that's the kind of player that the Packers would want to pick. And if you're thinking about, how the Packers have fallen in love with him, there's no better advocate for a guy like T-Mac than a guy like Jordan Morgan, who the Packers selected last year to join their roster on the offensive line. I think this would be a great spot for T-Mac to land if he is still there at 23. Eric Duthie says in the chat, I predict Travis Hunter will not be successful in the NFL. I think we can get to this a little later, but I think Travis Hunter could be very successful in the NFL if he, and again, I'm not trying to put a ceiling on it, but I just feel like the odds of him being able to do both, play both sides in the NFL, the physicality of the league, I don't think that it's necessarily probable. I won't say it's impossible, but I definitely don't think it's probable. I think that he would have to pick a side, or at least a side that he plays 90% of the time. And then maybe he dabbles on the other side every once in a while in more of utility role. We'll see how time tells with that. But yeah, I don't think that's an awful prediction. I don't think that's too far off base there from Eric. Michael wonders how T-Mac would potentially deal with the cold if he does go to Green Bay. I don't know. They always say that about California players and about West Coast players in general. How are they going to do when it's cold? I feel like these days the technology is so good that even if the game is frigid, you have those crazy jackets, they have the heater fans, they have the pocket warmers. I feel like they got it all at the NFL level now for staying warm. This isn't the Packers of the old where, you're going out there with leather helmets and barely any pads and just kind of toughing it out in the blizzard. But yeah, I do also wonder how T-Mac, if he would enjoy the cold, if he would welcome playing in the cold. Well, that is yet to be seen. Sam Albert said, I wouldn't be mad if he fell. He would have a much better quarterback to play with, which could help him become a great player in the league early. And this is kind of where my head is at. Because as we move to the next team that could select Tetairoa McMillan, you look at the Dallas Cowboys at number 12. This would be, in my opinion, the most ideal. And I don't think Sam's a Cowboy fan. I think he actually hates the Cowboys. So I'm sorry I'm using your comment to segue to send him to the Cowboys. But I think that it might be ideal if he ends up with the Cowboys. And I think this is why. It's a massive market that would expose who T-Mac is as a person to the general NFL fan, who I think would love T-Mac. I think they really would. I think that'd be good for him as a person that can market himself. I think that would be good for him in terms of league longevity, just being a household name. I think we've seen specifically receivers last longer into their career simply for living off their name, even if their production is not what it used to be. So I think that could help him. I also think the Dallas Cowboy fans, for better or worse, for whatever you think of Dallas Cowboy fans, the actual real Cowboy fans care about winning, and they also love a talented receiver. So I think T-Mac would fit right in with that culture. He would have a quarterback in the top half of the league in Dak Prescott. He would have a system that is proven to turn wide receivers into successes. I think also being able to play and learn behind a guy like CeeDee Lamb is only going to improve McMillan's chances of success in the league. And I don't think it puts too much pressure on him from the standpoint of CeeDee Lamb's always going to be the number one guy as long as he's in Dallas, right? So I think that, in contrast to going to a place like Green Bay, where he would actually be in contention for that number one spot at some point by the end of his rookie year, I feel like that would not be the case in Dallas. And I think he could be given more of a chance to just focus on getting better at football at the NFL level, as opposed to, hey, man, we really need you to be the guy coming up soon here. We need you now. I think that would be a much better situation for T-Mac. Michael says, I don't think Jerry cares about winning, so they will have a whack first-round pick. I think this is an interesting conversation, maybe for a different podcast, not about the Arizona Wildcats, but real quick, it's interesting, right? Because I almost feel like Jerry Jones does care about winning in a way. He just doesn't know that what he's doing has nothing to do with winning because he's a business dude. So he wants to win. So his idea of winning is having the best, most profitable, biggest brand, and then the wins will follow. I don't think he understands that it's inverse. You know what I mean? You got to win, and then the big brand follows. Recently, look at the Chiefs, right? Not the big brand, honestly, kind of a joke for a while. And then now they're one of the biggest names in all of sports from a franchise perspective. So, yeah, I'm with you on that, Michael. They probably will misplay the first-round draft pick because they are the Cowboys, and that is what the Cowboys do. But if they did pick T-Mac, I don't think it would be a misstep for them. A team kind of opposite on the spectrum, at least my spectrum, for NFL draft teams to take NFL teams to draft Tetairoa McMillan would be the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yuck. I don't want T-Mac in a Jacksonville Jaguars uniform. And I think this does actually seem highly unlikely that T-Mac goes number 5 to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Number 5, by the way, folks, would make him the highest drafted Arizona Wildcat of all time. The second highest would be number 10 overall in the first round. So anywhere in that top 10 would make T-Mac a record-breaking draft prospect for Arizona. But I continue. It seems unlikely the Jaguars pick him, in my opinion, because you just picked up Bryant Thomas Jr. You're probably grooming him to be your long-term number 1 guy. You'd likely want to supplant some extra supplemental talent to help push Trevor Lawrence and Bryant Thomas Jr. into the future, as opposed to taking another receiver who could only take touches away from Bryant Thomas Jr. And also, you're not helping protect Trevor Lawrence, even though you are signaling to him that you're investing in him. I think there are other more conducive ways to winning to prove to Trevor Lawrence that you care about him than to just simply draft another receiver. I know that T-Mac is not just another receiver, but with the 5th overall pick, you're not going to draft a guy who's going to play number 2. I feel like you really want to draft a guy who's going to impact your team year 1. And so I don't think that's T-Mac for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And that's kind of that situation I was referencing earlier about look around the league at who's at the top of this draft. There are some teams that are just never going to pick Tetairoa McMillan because they don't necessarily need to take Tetairoa McMillan with the high pick that they have. And these are GMs that you make one wrong move, you might get left. You know what I mean? So you don't want to play around with that. You don't want to draft a guy that could end up being your number 2 receiver with the 5th overall pick. And that's just not good business. Moving on to the next option here. Real quick, Michael says, for the sake of his well-being, I say 15 to 23 is his sweet spot. He is too talented to be wasted on a bad team. I agree. I also think he is too focused. Like he has too good of a mindset for that to go to waste on a franchise that does not care about winning. I think T-Mac is a player that GMs are falling in. I would assume they're falling in love with. I would assume coaches are falling in love with T-Mac. The more they talk to him about winning and how much football means and how focused he is on the game and getting better and being the best version of himself. Excuse me. Yeah, I feel like him, it's kind of like Carter Bryant in an extent, which we'll get to in the next segment. It's kind of like Carter Bryant where, yes, he's projected at the end of the first round. Yes, that makes him more money. Yes, if he came back, he would go higher, which is not T-Mac's case, but you get my point. Yes, if they improve, they could go higher. But is that actually better for their long-term development, right? Because Carter Bryant has proven he can develop in a supplementary bench role. If you do take him in the late 20s of the NBA draft, you're getting a heady guy who's incredibly skilled and is mature enough to come off the bench and wait for his name to be called and just trust that his work will show one day. I think T-Mac is kind of like that. So if he does go in the later end of the first round, that I have here in my notes, that could only help solidify him having a 10-plus year NFL career if he stays healthy, of course, praying for that. But like, I think going to a franchise that has infrastructure, that has foundational pieces for him to tag team with, I think would only cement him having a long, successful career in the NFL. And we do have, what is this? Oh, Espo got me some water. Shout out to Circle K. Shout out to Espo as well. Beautiful. Look at this beautiful Circle K cup. The Circle K next to the Block A. Y'all know it. Come on now. Excuse me. Had to use the water that Espo gave me there. But like I was saying, I almost do want him to go in the second half of the middle of the first round, just because that would be the best scenarios for him. The teams that are slightly more set up for success, slightly more set up to utilize his skill set correctly. And that leads me into number 20, the Denver Broncos, kind of smack dab in the middle of that Michael range that we were talking about. 2 people have mocked T-Mac to the Broncos. Adam Rank of NFL.com and Chris Sims of NBC Sports have both mocked him to the Broncos. It seems as though the Broncos are very likely to take Amarion Hampton in this year's draft, the running back. That is kind of the majority of the mocks have him going to the Broncos. I wouldn't be opposed to T-Mac going to the Broncos. I think that this is an interesting high ceiling, low floor kind of a situation because, I mean, I don't know how we feel about this in the chat. Is this a safe space? Is this a safe space? Because if T-Mac was picked by the Denver Broncos, you know what would technically be happening, right? He'd be reuniting with, in an alternate, horrifying universe where T-Mac didn't go to Arizona, he'd be reuniting with his college teammate, Bo Nix. Bo Nix in Denver. So I feel like that could be actually somewhat of a fun place for him to go. Young quarterback. People have a lot of faith in Bo Nix. You have young, talented players all over, scattered across that roster. I think Denver would not be a awful place for T-Mac to go in any way. Yeah, I could really see him succeeding there, and I can also see Denver Broncos fans falling in love with him as well in Denver. And then we have our last projection for where I think T-Mac might actually end up in this year's NFL draft. And let me know in the chat. So far, Cowboys at number 12 seems like the best option. But can I interest you in the Houston Texans at pick 25? Now, I don't know how I feel about Tetairoa McMillan being, falling all the way to 25. We spoke to how it could help him developmentally, but I think if we're looking at it from an objective perspective, it's hard to imagine all these GMs, all these coaches passing on T-Mac 25 times, or I guess 24 times it would be, and him getting picked 25th by the Houston Texans. But if Fields Yates projects it, then it must be true, right? He has him as his third receiver off the board at number 25 to the Houston Texans. CJ Stroud and Tetairoa McMillan might just feed families, folks. I'm not going to lie to you. That might just feed generations. CJ Stroud, I know he didn't have a great year last year, a bit of a sophomore slump. But that rookie year, even combined with the sophomore year, he showed a ton of flashes of very great all pro for multiple seasons kind of stuff, MVP candidate for multiple seasons kind of stuff. And I think if you pair T-Mac, who has shown he has the potential to be a, like I said earlier, 10-plus year NFL veteran, I think pairing him with a guy like CJ Stroud, are you going to turn that down at home? I'm not turning that down here. I would love to see that. I would be tuning in every single Sunday, Monday, or Thursday that CJ and Tetairoa would be on the field in theory. It could also take some of the load off of, sadly injury-prone / unlucky Tank Dell once he is back healthy. You also have him paired up with Nico Collins. The physicality of those two would be really, really hard to match up with from just a general size and physicality perspective, right? And not only that, he would reunite. Well, not reunite, but he would unite with former Cardinals receiver Christian Kirk. So they have that Arizona state, like the state of Arizona. We've probably been to some, have you been to the Grand Canyon? I've been to the Grand Canyon kind of stuff. That could just be a fun little subplot as well. So of these options, the Green Bay Packers at number 23, the Cowboys at number 12, the Jaguars at number 5, the Broncos at number 20, and the Houston Texans at number 25. Chat, what do we think is the best option for Tetairoa McMillan in this year's NFL draft? I'm leaning towards it's tough because I think there are three options that really stick out to me. It is the Packers and Jordan Love, it is the Cowboys and Dak Prescott, and it is the Texans. And it is the Texans with CJ Stroud. Anthony Totri is screaming Chargers. I would not be opposed to that. I think Justin Herbert, copy paste most of what I said about CJ Stroud and T-Mac to this Chargers conversation. Because I think Justin Herbert and T-Mac would also feed families. We have not seen Justin Herbert with, I'll say a true number one receiver in the prime of his career. And I know T-Mac would be a rookie, so it would take a couple years for him to reach that. But I think we all know Quentin Johnson is not that guy. I think we all know that Keenan Allen was a little bit older, trying to produce what he could produce for Justin Herbert. And the same thing applied to Justin Herbert about him not quite being in his prime yet during those Keenan Allen years. So, yeah, Totri, not the best decision maker we know, as he is a Sun Devil. But I think that is not the worst place for T-Mac to land, would be the San Diego Chargers. And it would make our guy Justin Spears very happy. He said on this very show that if you want to see, this is his words, a fat white guy do a backflip, draft T-Mac to the Chargers. And so selfishly, we're seeing Justin Spears do long snapping. We're seeing Justin Spears get a tryout for the University of Arizona football team. I would love to see Justin Spears try his hand at a backflip. I'm done doubting the man. I'm ready to see all the athletic capabilities of Justin Spears on display. So yeah, maybe that is my selfish plea to the Los Angeles Chargers. Wow. That's crazy. The Los Angeles Chargers to draft T-Mac so that I can see my guy Justin Spears do a backflip, maybe live on this show. Who knows? But we got more to talk about after this quick break. We're going to talk about Carter Bryant. Will he come back? Won't he come back? If he doesn't come back, who are some guys internally that could replace him? What should the strategy be? Plus, we had a special guest appearance from a former Wildcat in a social media post posted by Tobe Awaka recently. So we're going to talk about all that and more on the AZ Wildcats podcast after this quick break. Don't go anywhere. Leave a like, leave a comment. Folks, it is 12:35 p.m. right now, but that does not mean that it cannot also be happy hour, because with our friends over at Cornbread Hemp, you can look for a healthier way to a happy hour, and they are the first ever USDA organic CBD gummies and THC gummies. Cornbread offers the first USDA organic THC gummy in the world. And now I also want to mention that their literal mission is to improve your quality of life with the highest quality of hemp, which is one of the best ways you can do it if you ask me. They have 10 milligrams of THC per gummy, just the right dose. Cornbread uses no harsh solvents, no artificial petrochemicals and industrial acids, all that crazy stuff. I didn't even know petrochemicals was a word until Cornbread told me that it might be in some competitors' gummies. And I was like, are you serious? I got to switch over to Cornbread. No synthetic ingredients, farm bill compliant, and for legal adults over the age of 21. It has made it so much easier after like a long day of work or after an Arizona Wildcats loss to go home and have a nice little happy hour, a nice little relaxation hour by myself and my dog with our friends over at Cornbread Hemp. So if you're looking for a healthier way to enjoy a carefree moment, you have to get Cornbread Hemp a try. For listeners of this podcast, you can get 30% off your first order. Just visit cornbreadhemp.com/PHNX and use code PHNX at checkout. Again, that's cornbreadhemp.com/PHNX. Use code PHNX for 30% off your first order. Cheers to a healthier, happy hour. And before, drive safe. Before using your Cornbread Hemp gummies, make a stop at Circle K, pick up some snacks for later. Make sure to stop by America's Thirst Stop, because Circle K is the place to be. I took a road trip down to Tucson this past weekend. My first stop when I got there was to Circle K to fill up, get some water, say what's up to the people inside the Circle K. No, I'm joking. But yeah, I went in there. My guy Max got me a fuel card. So I'm not only an Inner Circle member getting 5 cents off per gallon, but I also get that 10 cents off with the fuel card there. So make sure to join the Inner Circle Awards today. You get 25 cents off on your first 5 fill-ups with this program. You get 3 cents off every day after that. And you also get 5 cents off once you graduate into that next tier, like me, like Damon, and it could be you. Make sure to stop by Circle K in 2 days for an Inner Circle Fuel Day, where Inner Circle members save 40 cents off from 6 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. So join the Inner Circle today for free by downloading the Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for more details. I love Circle K. I will say this. I was not fully hip to the Circle K game until I moved down to Arizona, almost, how many years ago now? A long time ago, 6 years ago now, since I moved down to Arizona, and Circle K just runs this state. It is beautiful to see, way better than being ran by some of the other gas station competitors. Like, I don't know what to tell you about those people, but they're not doing it like Circle K. So make sure to stop by Circle K today, and hopefully Carter Bryant stops by Circle K on his way back from the NBA draft process, and he realizes that it's just better in Arizona, and he wants to come back. Because another Arizona Wildcat getting draft buzz recently is Carter Bryant of the basketball team. He recently re-signed, technically. I don't know how we feel about this, but he did recently re-sign a rev-sharing deal where if Carter Bryant were to return for this upcoming season, he would already have his NIL revenue sharing in place. And I think that's a really cool thing. First of all, there's pros and cons in that conversation, but I do think that it's a cool thing that they're giving these kids security in the sense that, hey man, go chase your dream. if you don't make it this year, we got a paycheck waiting on you when you get back. I think it's comforting and it gives security in a way, because think back to just half a decade ago, where if you signed on at a team to commit at a high school and then tore your ACL or had some sort of catastrophic injury heading into college, they could just take your scholarship from you. And there was no security. And I know that's a bit of a dramatic example, but my point being, I think it's cool that schools are trying to look out for not only their best interest and get their player back, but also look out for their player and make sure that they have that somewhat security on the back burner. But I think some of the cons to that are it kind of hamstrings Arizona in a way, right? Because if Carter Bryant has this revenue sharing deal, this new revenue sharing deal signed, and then he does go to the NBA, it's tough for Arizona, because likely they would not be spending that money on anybody else until Carter Bryant makes that decision very clear. And I think with the portal closing today for entries, you don't have to have a home yet, but the portal did close today for all entries. It's going to be even harder for Arizona to find a replacement for Carter Bryant in the portal the longer that this goes on. Now, I've seen some people on social media saying that, oh, it should be easy, just go get whomever, also went to the draft and couldn't make it. I feel like that's actually a good place to start, but I'm unsure about, you don't just find guys like Carter Bryant laying around everywhere, especially if they're going to go to the NBA draft process. A lot of those guys get swooped up by the NBA. So I think, like Michael says, he thinks that in that case, they get a guy that tests the NBA waters and comes back to school. I think that's a great idea. My only question would be, though, do we know for certain that there's going to be a wing that can score and play defense in that same group of guys? You know what I mean? Like, what is the exact crop of guys? And I think that on Thursday, we're going to have Saul Bookman on, and he and I are going to look at external options, external solutions, players that might be able to come into Arizona to replace Carter Bryant should he go to the NBA. But today, I want to look at players internally that could replace him if he did chase that NBA draft dream. Because like I said, if he goes to the NBA this year, no one in Arizona's fan base is going to poo-poo him or say that, he's dumb for making that decision, because quite frankly, he may never get this opportunity again. That's the way this life works. He does not know what tomorrow has offered for him. You have to take advantage of the opportunities put in front of your plate every day. I think if he comes back next season and does not work on, the off-the-dribble shot creation, the actual ball handling, some of the smaller things on defense, if he comes back next year, yes, it could take his stock to a whole new level. He could go top 5 next year if he balls out at Arizona after a sophomore season. But conversely, like I was alluding to, if Carter Bryant returns and he is a similar player to last year, or he is just barely improved, I feel like that could drop his stock, because we're all sitting here banking on a huge, huge leap for Carter Bryant, which I think is likely. I'm not doubting Carter Bryant. I'm just bringing to you the reality of the situation is that sometimes guys come back and they don't take that leap that you thought they were going to take. With all due respect, shout out to KJ Lewis, right? Like, I think a lot of fans last season saw KJ Lewis ball. I know it was a different level than the potential, right, of Carter Bryant and KJ Lewis. Carter Bryant, a much higher ceiling than KJ Lewis. But I think we all know, as Arizona fans, coming into this season, we're thinking, oh, you know what? KJ Lewis, defensive lockdown. He's going to get better on offense. He's going to be a better ball handler. He's going to be a better shooter. And then he injured his wrist, had his worst shooting year of his life, didn't improve as a ball handler, but still was great defensively. And so I bring you that to say, if Carter Bryant returns, he should be one of the best players in college basketball next season. But if he's not, I think it actually hurts his draft stock. And I think that that's kind of another variable that Damon and I haven't really talked about yet in terms of the Carter Bryant conversation. We haven't talked about what if he comes back and he's not as good, because like I said, we all believe in Carter Bryant. I don't think that's the most likely scenario, but it is a somewhat realistic scenario to have to discuss. And I think we've discussed his draft potential this season at length. He could go anywhere from that 12 pick to the end of round 1, and he can earn anywhere from $1.7 to $3 million plus if he goes to the NBA. Again, unsure if that revenue sharing deal matches that, if it comes in between that range, if it's on the high end of the range, if it's outside the range on the bottom end. But I think it's maybe safe to say he'll be earning 7 figures next season, regardless of what uniform he is wearing. And I think that kind of plays into this again when I'm talking to you all about, him chasing his opportunities while he's guaranteed these opportunities, right? I think that if you have that money in front of you and it's guaranteed by the NBA and you can start your NBA career now, it'd be hard to tell him not to do that. Even though he's chasing his national title dream, even though his homies are on this year's team, it's going to be hard to sway a kid away from that much money and a lifelong dream, right? I know you always dream of being a national champion, but after that, you dream of being an NBA champion. And if you tried and failed at the national title this season, but you can chase that NBA title and you can start that dream now, it's going to be hard to sway him off of that. And like I said, if Bryant does fall in love with the NBA draft and he goes through the process, who should replace him? Me and Saul are going to talk about individuals that could do that outside of Arizona, but I think inside of Arizona, you have to start with Dwayne Aristode, the 6'8", defensive lockdown, 4-star, 5-star, depending upon where you look, super high 4-star no matter what. He could actually be, I feel like, a defensive upgrade over Carter Bryant day one next season. I feel like he has been super underrated throughout this entire offseason. I'll say logically so, not rightfully so, because I think he's incredibly talented and he should be talked about more, and we're talking about him right now, but he should be talked about more. But I think when you're looking at this offseason logically, it just makes so much sense as to why he's become the unsung hero of Tommy Lloyd's recruiting class. You have Koa Pete, who's a superstar. You have Braden Burries, who is, they're both clutch guys, like very well known in the high school basketball community kind of names. Like Koa Pete's in-state superstar as well. Braden Burries just up the road in California. And you look around and you're thinking to yourself like, oh, wow, they got those two. And then earlier they also picked up LeBron's kid. Have we talked about LeBron's kid? Let's go talk about LeBron's kid. And then you look down at the first recruit Tommy Lloyd brought in this recruiting class, and you're like, Dwayne Aristode, who is that guy? And you're looking into him and you're thinking, wow, 6'8", lengthy, athletic, can kind of shoot the mid-range a little bit, definitely great on defense, good in transition. Tommy Lloyd might have got him one. And if you're looking at guys who could replace Carter Bryant's production next season, while Carter Bryant is extremely offensively skilled, let's real quick this is great podcasting, but let's take a look at Carter Bryant's stats as I look that up right now. Just want to make sure I got the numbers right. Yeah, Carter Bryant last season averaged 6.5 points, 4.1 boards, and an assist on 46% shooting. As much as we love Carter Bryant, his pure raw production from a numbers standpoint, I know basketball is so much more than numbers, but just in a vacuum, right? Replacing his production is not as hard as we think it's going to be if he does go to the NBA. It's the potential. It's the replacing of the potential that becomes incredibly hard. And I think that's where you talk about Dwayne Aristode. I think Dwayne Aristode can come in and replace some of the production that Carter Bryant's had. I think he can come in and place like 80% of the production that Carter Bryant had. I think that from a defensive standpoint, you gain by the end of the season a player in Dwayne Aristode. But again, we've seen it with Carter Bryant. It's a known entity. I think that exactly, right, Michael? I'm shocked looking at these numbers that he only put up 6.5 points, 4 boards, and an assist. But that's kind of where I'm coming from, right? Like, replacing Carter Bryant from a potential standpoint, from an intangible standpoint, seems incredibly difficult. But if you're just talking about making the team on paper more productive, I don't think he's the end-all, be-all as much as I love Carter Bryant. And I'm not trying to bag on Carter Bryant. I'm just trying to bring to you that if Carter Bryant does go to the NBA, maybe it's not the end of the world for Arizona basketball next season because they're still incredibly talented, and his replacement, who's built pretty much the exact same as him physically, could come in and replace 70% of the production that he had last season coming off the bench, because guess what? Dwayne Aristode would likely be coming off the bench next season if Carter Bryant does not return. If you look at a lineup with no Carter Bryant, as I have it here on my little sticky note, that's why I'm looking down. You have Jaden Bradley at the point being backed up by Evan Nelson. You have Braden Burries at the 2. And then you kind of have this ADO question of, if Carter Bryant doesn't come back, do you slide Dwayne Aristode to the 3 starting role? And ADO is like that backup 2, backup 3 kind of guy. He kind of can play the small ball 3 or the big 2. And then you have Koa Pete at the 4. And then you have Tobe Awaka / Krivas at the 5. Tobe Awaka can back up the 4 if whatever the rotation is going to be. I I don't know. It's tough because if you have Dwayne Aristode in that starting role and ADO coming off the bench, it's a lot of pressure on Dwayne Aristode as a freshman to come in and be that guy, be a mate, like be a true impact player day one. Which, again, not trying to count him out, he could be, but I think in the current state of college athletics, it's hard to expect freshmen to come in and compete with teams that are put together with the transfer portal and have played. They're veterans now. Like, they're paid professional veterans. I think it's hard for high schoolers to come in and compete at that level. We saw Cooper Flagg do it this past year, but he was doing stuff that no one's done since Anthony Davis, really. Zion Williamson, I suppose. But do we think Dwayne Aristode is that caliber of player? If we do, we're rolling. But I don't know if he's necessarily at that level. I think he's very good, but I don't think he's going to change the day one, change the outlook of this team. I think by the end of the season, Dwayne Aristode could be a guy that we're looking like, how did we not talk about Dwayne Aristode leading up to this season enough? I really think that could be the case. Also, shout out to Robbie Don, who says, great coverage on Saturday with the team, guys. Bear down. Appreciate each and every one of you guys who have watched our interviews with pretty much every guy on Arizona football's organization program there. We had Brent Brennan, Seth Dagey, Danny Gonzalez, Chris Hunter, Genesis Smith, Dalton Johnson, and QB1 Noah Fafita on the pod. So if you haven't checked that out, I don't know if you've been living under a rock or what, but make sure to go check out Saturday's pod. It was a ton of fun. It was a privilege to be out there for Arizona Athletics at the spring showcase. And yeah, it was a dream come true. Could not have been happier to do that pod. Thank you, Robbie Don, for tuning into that. And if you're like Robbie Don and think this coverage is great, please leave a like on this video. Please subscribe to the PHNX YouTube channel. We're trying to hit 40K subs before the NFL draft. We're trying to bring more diehards in. I actually had a really cool idea for diehard content this morning when I woke up, and I'm not going to tell you all about it because y'all going to have to become diehards to find out about it. So make sure to take advantage of our diehard sale. Join the most inclusive, loving sports community in all of Arizona and become a diehard. Not yesterday, not tonight, right now, as soon as this show goes off the air. And join us in the Discord. You can chat it up with me every day, chat up with Damon every day. You can go bother Shane, Eric, and Totri about their sorry Sun Devils. Do whatever you want to do in our Discord. It is up to you, within reason. But yeah, make sure to become a diehard and join this wonderful family. Eric Duthie says this basketball team is going to be fire. I agree with you. And at the minimum, Eric, I think this basketball team is going to be entertaining as hell, and they're going to be fun to root for. And I think as a fan, that's like the core of what you want to wish for. If you're an Iowa football fan, of course you want to win the national title. But if you win it scoring 7 points, of course you're happy. But you're like, damn, gotta watch another game of Iowa football score 7 points in a game. And so, real quick, I'll touch on another possible replacement for Carter Bryant here, and Anthony Delorso, who is already on the team. Technically not a replacement for Carter Bryant. Technically, Carter Bryant would be replacing him in the starting lineup. But I think if Carter Bryant does go to the NBA, you have to look at Anthony Delorso possibly starting at that 3 again. And I know for better or worse, we saw a lot of ADO last season. Real quick, water break. Don't forget to drink water if you're at home. Very important. Yeah, facts. Thank you, Shane. But yeah, like I was saying, ADO, we saw a lot of him last season for better or worse, but I have been open and honest that I think that given an off season, given a full season in the Big 12 last year, Anthony Delorso can be much improved in year 2 in the Big 12. And I'm not talking about like all of a sudden ADO is scoring 20 a game and looks like a superstar. I'm talking about this guy could be on your television screen and you not feel he's imminently coming off of your television screen every second he's on it. I feel like his shot, might be more consistent. He's already got an incredibly silky jumper. I think he'll bulk up a little bit this offseason, get that offseason strength of the Big 12. He'll have another year in Tommy Lloyd's system to truly understand what's being asked of him, play in, play out, especially on the defensive end. And I think this is likely the day one replacement option for Carter Bryant if he were to go to the NBA, just simply because of ADO's experience, ADO's literal age. I think Tommy Lloyd really has shown he trusts guys who have played in a lot of games, regardless of the level. Look at Trey Townsend, the trust that Tommy Lloyd showed in him. Even though he hadn't even played many games at the Big 12 level, he had just played a lot of games in general in his college career. And Tommy Lloyd knew how much that experience could, help Trey Townsend last season. It obviously didn't work out the way that we thought. it would. But I say all that to say that if Anthony D'Alorso does replace Carter Bryant next season in the starting lineup theoretically, or stays in the starting lineup, I think might be the proper terminology there. I think Arizona fans will be pleasantly surprised with Anthony D'Alorso's production next season. I think he'll be a lot more steady of a basketball player in 2025, 2026. And I want to wrap up this show by talking to you all about, one more time, Eric, are we going to see LeBron don a U of A jersey on the sideline next year in support of Bryce? I think my smile just might crack my entire face open if that does happen, because as a huge LeBron stan, seeing LeBron in a U of A jersey that I don't have to Photoshop onto LeBron, cinema. That is my magnum opus. That is my my final, I can die happy kind of thing, seeing that. I kid. But yeah, no, I honestly think there's a good chance we see LeBron and Mikal next season at some point to support Bryce, especially if Arizona is good next season, especially if they play a team with, that looks like they're going to really be contending at the end of the year, which is likely, knowing Arizona's schedule. Yes, Michael, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you. I didn't grab the image because I'm a one-man band today. I can only do so much, chat. But yes, I do want to touch on this. Tobe Awaka did an ice bucket challenge, and you can go find this on his social media. It's just very simple an image. It's a screenshot of him in a chair. You all remember the ice bucket challenge. A couple guys behind him pouring buckets of ice on top of Tobe Awaka, and he looks freezing cold. But the biggest takeaway from this post is who he gave photo credit to, chat. He gave photo credit. He tagged Kylan Boswell. Tobe Awaka is just chopping it up with Kylan Boswell. Kind of I'll call it a funny development. I think you had Oumar Ballo announce his entrance into the NBA draft pool, and then you also had Carter Bryant reposting that, and now you have Tobe Awaka and Kylan Boswell hanging out. I know that some fans don't like Kylan Boswell. I know some fans, feel very negatively towards him. I feel critically of Kylan Boswell. Like I don't think he's above criticism for his time at Arizona. I think there were some real things that you could legitimately criticize him for during his time here. But I don't harbor any ill will towards him. I hope he does well in the remainder of his college career and whatever. But yeah, I thought it was wild that somehow Tobe Awaka became homies with him. And also you have Carter Bryant reposting old Arizona players' stuff. So maybe this Arizona fraternity of recent guys is a little bit more connected than we think. And also Michael says, fun fact for that, or on that for you, my little brother is a freshman at U of A and says he has seen Boswell at the rec for the last month or so. And I'll share a fun fact for you, Michael. I don't know if I mentioned this on the show, but my old roommate from my senior year of college, his younger sister is Kylan's girlfriend, or at least was. I haven't checked on the status of that relationship. So at one point was dating Kylan Boswell, at least in this past season for sure still. So he could be in Arizona, like visiting her family. I know that like they're from there. So it's possible he's just enjoying Tucson, like Erica says, and seeing some old friends, some old family, and going back to the old stomping grounds. Because I don't think Kylan Boswell harbors a bunch of ill will towards the city of Tucson. If anything, he harbors some ill will towards individuals in the city of Tucson. But I think Kylan Boswell, probably trying to get out of Illinois this time of year, trying to see some sun. I don't blame the kid for that at all. And as we wrap up this extravaganza of a solo show that was, I wanted to quick mention some news and notes. Number 13 ranked Arizona softball has a doubleheader today at Rita versus New Mexico. This is a great chance for Arizona to really respectfully steamroll an opponent after dropping 2 of 3 to top Big 12 team Texas Tech. New Mexico State visited Western Kentucky for a 3-game set over the last weekend. They combined for just 1 run, not related to a home run, over the entire weekend. And over the 19 innings, they tallied just 14 hits with a .212 batting average. So Arizona should be able to handle New Mexico quite handedly. Christiana Watson, I wanted to mention this, the daughter of Arizona legend Laura Espinoza Watson, made her New Mexico State debut earlier this year as well. She's the only Aggie to start in every game, making 41 appearances at first base and 3 as the designated player. Also, I wanted to mention Michelle his name always trips me up. Marciniak. Pretty easy to actually say, but like it's just it's a hurdle to jump over. Named the GM of Arizona women's basketball. We knew that earlier this week, but it was recently announced that she will actually be moving down to the bench to, kind of do a little bit of double duty, as we have a tweet here from David Kelly that says, AD Desiree Reed-Francois said during her spring showcase broadcast on Saturday night that the new women's basketball GM, Michelle Marciniak, will also be on court assistant coach for new U of A head coach Becky Burke. And I thought that this was a very interesting tidbit to bring to the U Chat today, because when you look at what Becky Burke is building, she's building a lot of credibility. And when you look at what Marciniak has been able to accomplish in her career, NCAA champion, WNBA veteran, entrepreneur, and this is someone who kind of can touch on everything you need to do as a general manager. Gives you credibility that says, hey, if you come to Arizona, we have pro experience. We can get you to where you want to be in the WNBA. Hey, if you come to Arizona, we can help set you up as an entrepreneur. Hey, I can help create fundraising efforts and initiatives for this basketball program. And her core responsibilities will be program operations, staffing, roster management, global recruiting, and NIL development. And also, obviously, will be kind of mentoring Becky Burke slightly a little bit here and there. I kind of love every move Becky Burke's been making. I've said it on Twitter recently as well. And I hope that continues. And maybe Skim Moki just posted on Twitter a nice little Wilbur gif. So maybe another recruit coming down the pipe for Arizona women's basketball. But folks, that's going to do it for your boy Kevo Post today on the AZ Wildcats podcast. And I appreciate each and every one of you guys for tuning in. As our guy Derek says on D-backs, he is not wrong. Time is your most valuable asset on this entire planet. So I appreciate you all for spending an hour plus with me today. And we'll see you tomorrow. I have Justin Spears coming in tomorrow. We're going to talk about spring ball, a little bit of basketball, a little bit of Tucson stuff. And also, if you do become a diehard, I'm going to be throwing the top 5 headlines from Arizona athletics at our expert, Justin Spears, getting his personal opinion, his professional opinion, and bringing it to you, diehards only. So become a diehard. First link in the description right now, not in 10 minutes, right now, to check that out. Justin Spears on tomorrow, Saul Bookman on Thursday, Erica Day, potentially another special guest on Friday. I once again appreciate all of you for joining the pod. Leave a like, subscribe. As always, bear down, go Cats.
We all silly like the mayor.